Hello everyone, it's me, the Retro Den, and as you probably saw in the title, today I'm here to talk about my experience with The Witcher 3 in 2024, since it's been collecting dust in my backlog ever since 2018 or somewhere around that, where I grabbed the complete collection or the Ultimate Edition for €10, and I just now decided to play it this year, where I decided to take another chance at PC gaming and some of the games that I have in my huge backlog. So today I'm here to tell you about what are my initial and very initial, considering the amount of hours I've played until now, 70 hours, thoughts about the game, what I did, what I haven't done yet, where I'm up to in the story, and what I basically think about the game. So I think it's fitting that we start by the world, since I'm a big fantasy world and game enthusiast, and Skyrim and Dark Souls being some of my favorite games, I thought the world is a good thing to analyze or to take into account when it comes to these kinds of games, and The Witcher's world is something that left me very curious, especially when it comes to the initial zones such as Velen or White Orchard, because when you compare this game to something like Skyrim, for example, this is not like a megalithic game. There are not huge structures in the game that you can look and say, wow, there were like past civilizations here. This is like high fantasy with huge castles and stuff like that, because The Witcher is based in real life problems. It's based in real life situations and cultures. So what happens is that everything during wartime, which is basically the setting of the game, is a war that's taking place in the north. Forgive me if I don't have the specific terms of who is fighting, but I know it's the Redanians against the Black Ones. If I get that wrong, please don't sue me, just leave something in the comments. But yeah, it's wartime and everything is basically dying around you. You feel the disgrace around you, you feel the poverty in the villages, you feel and know how desperate people are, and it shows in the world with corpses lying around, everything being burned down, how people act towards you, and just even by the background chatter of people whenever you go through places. And I think that's might not appeal to everyone, but I can see the appeal of it for someone who is looking for games with more realistic traits. And that is not to say that the game at some points doesn't have its shining moments when it comes to places and locations. For example, at 70 hours I have just now reached Skellige, and Skellige is immensely pretty. I don't know about the DLC zones or anything like that, and I can imagine they're just as pretty, but compared to Velen and Novigrad, Skellige is really pretty, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it as a zone. But other than that, Velen is like the face of everything I just mentioned, and it shows just how bad things can get in wartime during these medieval styled eras. So when it comes to the story and questing, I think this is one of the most important aspects to also talk about when we're talking about these kinds of games, because The Witcher is very much based on the story from the books and everything that was written by Andrew Sapkowski. And I think in this game, story comes first to the gameplay, even though they are pretty toe-to-toe, and we'll talk about the gameplay after we talk about the story. But I think it's a very good story. Until now, I'd only played The Witcher 1 and a little bit of Witcher 2, around 10 hours of The Witcher 2, which didn't run very well on my PC. It had optimization problems, so I decided to just abandon it. But I read on the backstory of the Witcher 2 and Witcher 1 game, even though I already played it, to try and learn as much as I could before heading into The Witcher 3, and I can say they did a really good job connecting this to the overall universe of The Witcher and the original books. And I think the story is really good because it appeals to people who like decision making in games. Everything in this game appeals to you being able to make your own decisions and deciding the outcome of every single quest or story or plot beat, and that's something that very much appeals to me. I like the classic RPG elements of you really immersing yourself in the story and in the world and in the quests and the characters around you, and I think being able to decide the outcome of every single quest or almost every single quest is something that very much appeals to me and that I like to have in my RPG games. And it's something that I feel it's kind of similar to Skyrim, one of my favorite games of all time, so I find that very, very appealing. And I know it gets kind of tiring when people compare this game to something like Skyrim, because in essence they are very two very different games, and I just take them Skyrim as a point of reference because it was my first introduction. Well, if you don't count Oblivion, which I played as a little kid and didn't understand anything of it, Skyrim is a very good point of reference for fantasy games because it basically is one of, if not the most famous fantasy game that ever existed, and I think there's a case to be compared with The Witcher. But other than that, I think the story in The Witcher is way better than Skyrim's, and that's not even a discussion as well. And I have to see how it ends, because until now I've only played until Novigrad, and I'm very much enjoying everything when it comes to the side content, because that's another thing when it comes to the story. I think the side content pairs very well with the main story, developing the characters even further and giving you more opportunities to immerse yourself in the world and in the characters that are inside of it. So that's basically my opinion on the story and the quest aspect of the game. I think it's very, very good. Now, when it comes to everything that everyone cares about, it's the gameplay. We have to talk about the gameplay, and I have no complaints when it comes to the Witcher 3 gameplay. I really like gameplay that rewards you for taking your time to read stuff and understand how the mechanics in the game work, because if you don't know what the Witcher is and you have been living under a rock for the past 7 years, basically you're a Witcher, you're a monster hunter, and you take on contracts to kill certain beasts. And of course, certain beasts are weaker to some types of oils and bombs and signs, which are the magic of the game, and then you just decide how to approach every single encounter, and you have to kill these beasts and even kill humans. You have the 2 swords, one for humans, one for monsters, and I think the general gameplay loop of the game is very good. You match a few sections with you having to kill humans for the human part of the story, and then mix it with contracts you have to take on throughout the story, and I think it makes for a good gameplay loop that doesn't get too stale or stagnant, however you want to call it, because you also have to keep on learning about new monsters and unlocking new recipes for the alchemy part of the game in order to make it easier for you to kill these monsters. And pair that up with a good gear system that rewards you for collecting certain parts of gear for each Witcher school, depending on what type of gameplay you want to follow, either that be sword combat or sign combat, which is the magic aspect of the game, or maybe a mix of both, and you have a very good gameplay in general. And I think it won't appeal to everyone, because there's something that Nicky Jakey actually coined, the goopy gobber gamer brain, which is what I notice a lot of people suffer from when I recommend them certain games, which is some people just don't like to read, and that's okay. And I think The Witcher is just as much gameplay and enjoying the moment-to-moment gameplay as it is story and immersing yourself and reading and being hyped for what is happening. That's not just slashing your sword mindlessly around. So you have to take that into account. The gameplay is very good, but it's almost like 50 to 60% of the game. The other 40% you are going to be just hearing people talk and talking to other people, and that's okay if you're not a fan of it. But if you are a fan of games like Star Wars The Old Republic or Knights of the Old Republic or maybe the OG Mass Effects, you are going to enjoy this game. And it's kind of weird for me to be saying this, since at this point I'm the only person who hadn't played this game already, but I thought I'd give my opinion on the gameplay. And it's very tactical, so if you are comparing it to other fantasy games such as the ones as I referred previously, compare it more to something like Dark Souls, where you have to be very methodical with your dodges and your rolls and recognizing enemy patterns, rather than something like Skyrim, where you can just mindlessly spam and slash your swords and hammers around and you'll get the job done. So you have to be a bit more careful when it comes to The Witcher, especially when it comes to the higher difficulties, because you then have to be careful with managing your toxicity and the potions you are using. But overall, for me, very enjoyable gameplay, and I have no complaints about it. I actually really like the contract aspect of the game, because I love learning about new monsters and how Geralt approaches every single one of these monsters, like the example of the Noon Wraiths, where every case is different and every Noon Wraith is haunting a spot for a different reason, and you have to discover the backstory of what's happening. And I think there's a case to be made for why the contracts are the one of the best parts in this game. Then I thought we'd just talk about some other stuff I think it's relevant to mention, which is the music. The music for this game, it's like top notch. It's one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a fantasy game. It goes toe to toe with soundtracks like Skyrim and Dark Souls, and I'm going to keep mentioning these two games because they're the best references I have as of now. But very good soundtrack, and I think if all of you trophy hunters out there want to learn about the side content in this game, because that's something we're also always very worried about when it comes to achievement hunting. Although I'm not actually achievement hunting in The Witcher, I'm taking my time and enjoying. There is a huge amount of side content in this game, and I can prove that because I have around 70 hours of gameplay, and I've only been through like 30% of the story, and I still have a lot to do. And right now, the How Long to Beat site lists The Witcher 3 as a 50-hour game to beat, but there's certainly over 200 hours of content in this game for you to easily go through. And if you want to experience with the gameplay aspect of the game rather than just the story and the quests and feeling the checklist aspect of the game, there's a lot of moving room for how much content you'll get out of this game. So I think if you're a person that enjoys just digging deeper into each universe and taking the most out of each game, this is certainly a game that is filled to the brim with content and that doesn't feel as repetitive as other open world games. So I clearly now understand why people consider The Witcher 3 to be one of the landmarks and one of the best open world games that has ever released, and I'm very much sure that when I finish this game it will easily become one of my favorite games of all time. And I know that's been a trend for every single game I've played recently, but I've made a commitment to, in 2024 moving to 2025, I'm trying to play only the better games, because you don't live forever, as I say in a lot of my videos, and we've only so much time for playing and to play these amazing games, and why not tackle them right now and save some time for the worst stuff later rather than just playing bad stuff right now. So yeah, I'm going to keep playing all these considered masterpieces throughout this year, and The Witcher 3 was one of the first ones I decided to do so. And yeah, these were my thoughts on the game. I hope you enjoyed too. If you haven't played it, I recommend you do so, and if you have played it and would like to leave your comments on what you think, because that's another thing. People are very prone to discussion when it comes to the Witcher community, because since there are a lot of decisions to be made in the game, people are always very split between what they are going to do when it comes to certain aspects of the game. But yeah, this has been my opinion on The Witcher 3 after playing 70 hours of the game, and other than that, I hope you have a nice week. This has been the Retro Dan, and I'm out.